Welcome to a field of scorched earth, the sun barely rising over the horizon of Mississippi, 1933. The wind stirs the tall grasses with a whisper, carrying the scent of smoke from distant burnt cane, an echo of decades past. Here, in the shadow of a decaying wooden cabin, a family stands, their faces etched with survival eyes fixed on a future that refuses to promise mercy. A mother holds a child whose small fingers clutch the coarse fabric of worn clothing. The father shoulders heavy gazes toward the distant tree line, where shadows move like silent watchers, like memories that refuse to die. You can almost hear the soft creak of the cabin floorboards. Under invisible feet, the ghosts of ancestors pacing, waiting for the story to be told. Before this story begins, pause and consider. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be erased, yet still stand to live on a land that refuses to acknowledge you, and yet claim it with every breath, every heartbeat, every act of survival? The resilient family of Mississippi, who faced a world designed to break them, yet endured. They call them sharecroppers, yet in the diaries and reports that survived, in the ads posted in local papers, in the whispers of neighbors, the word barely scratches the surface. Here, in this cabin, in this patch of hard, unyielding soil, lives a story of endurance, of lives measured not in wealth or fame, but in the quiet defiance of waking each day to a world that has never wanted you to survive. One by one, the children emerge from the shadows of the porch, bare feet on the rough dirt, eyes wide with questions that will never find simple answers. And in the corners of the fields behind the bending stalks of cane, you can almost see them, shapes that flit through the fog of memory. Figures lost to the records, erased by those who deemed their existence insignificant. Yet they move with purpose, carrying the weight of their own survival. A sudden gust shakes the skeletal branches of the lone oak nearby. The wind moans almost like a lament, and for a moment time seems to stop, as if the earth itself remembers the toil, the suffering, the moments of fleeting joy. The family remains steadfast, their gaze unwavering, though history has turned its back. October 1933. Mississippi stretches like a vast canvas of muted earth tones, where the fields of cane roll endlessly under a sky that refuses to promise rain. The air hangs thick with humidity, clinging to the skin, carrying the scent of burned stalks, of dust, of smoke from distant fires that may never have existed. Small wooden cabins scatter across the landscape, leaning against the weight of decades, their boards warped and weathered windows staring blankly at a world that has moved on without them. In one such cabin, nestled at the edge of a field, the resilient family awakens each day to a life measured not by comfort or leisure, but by the rhythm of labor, the unyielding demands of the earth. The father rises first, his silhouette framed by the doorway, a shadow among shadows. The rough fabric of his shirt clings to shoulders, stiffened by toil. The mother stirs beside the hearth, her hands worn and calloused, moving with quiet precision, stoking embers that will barely warm the small room. Outside, the children emerge from the shackles of slumber, feet bare on packed dirt, eyes blinking against the glare of morning sun. Every movement is deliberate, every breath measured, as if the land itself watches and judges. And in the distance, the horizon shimmers with the heat, a mirage that promises escape, yet delivers only more labor. The plantation that once claimed this land is now a ghost of its former self. The mansion, long abandoned, its white columns streaked with rain and neglect, yet still imposing. The cane fields continue to grow tall and menacing, as if reaching for the sky with every desperate stalk. And in those fields, the resilient family bends again and again, planting, harvesting, tending. Their bodies echoing the generations that came before slaves, sharecroppers, freedmen, each laboring under the weight of a history that refuses to forgive. Listen closely, and you might hear the whispers carried on the wind. Faint echoes of voices that once shouted orders of drums that marked the passage of time, of songs hummed softly under breath to keep the mind from breaking. Some say the ghosts of those who disappeared long ago linger here, their presence almost tangible in the rustle of cane leaves in the shadows beneath the oak trees, in the way the light bends across the dirt in the late afternoon. A child pauses at the edge of the field, sensing something that cannot be named. Perhaps a spirit of an ancestor watching, perhaps just the imagination of youth, or perhaps the land itself speaking, recounting the sorrows and resilience of those who came before. The cabin itself holds its own stories. Floorboards groan under weight, walls creak as the wind presses against them. The hearth is cold, yet smells faintly of last night's cooking, a mixture of cornmeal, molasses, and hope. Outside, chickens scratch at the ground, pecking at scraps, oblivious to the heavy gaze of history upon the family. The dog lies nearby, ears pricked, sensing more than what meets the eye. Every element of this environment, the sunburnt dirt, the skeletal trees, the distant smoke, forms a backdrop that is alive with memory. A stage upon which survival is both performance and necessity. The community beyond the cabin is small, tight-knit, yet cautious. A few cabins dot the landscape, each housing families bound by the same tenuous grip on life. They share what little they have, exchange news in hushed tones, warn of dangers that may never come, or that may strike with sudden devastating force. Schoolhouses are rare, and those that exist are crammed and underfunded. Children learn what they must to survive, lessons dictated by necessity. The church offers solace, wooden pews polished by generations of hands, a pulpit worn smooth by sermons of faith and endurance. Spirituals rise and fall, carrying with them messages, both sacred and urgent songs that recount sorrow and joy, in equal measure songs that speak to the endurance of a people whose lives have been defined by loss. Outside the immediate settlement, the land itself seems to hold its breath. The forests at the edges of the fields are dark and dense. Shadows stretch across the earth, shifting with the motion of the sun, bending in ways that defy understanding. Animals move silently, appearing and disappearing as if they themselves respect the unspoken rules of this place. The wind carries stories, some factual, some folklore, through the branches, whispering of runaway slaves who vanished without trace, of fires that burned cabins to ash, of spectral figures walking at night along the same paths that the family now treads. It is a landscape that teaches vigilance, that instills caution, that reminds every inhabitant that the past is never truly gone. In the quiet hours before dawn, the family moves as one, shadows blending with shadows, each member performing tasks honed through repetition and necessity. The mother fetches water from a nearby stream. The father repairs a fence, the older children tend the small garden, the younger ones watch and learn. Each action is both survival and ritual, a choreography of life etched into muscle memory. And through it all, the ghosts linger, not always visible, but felt. In the chill of the morning air, in the rustle of leaves, in the way the dog growls softly at nothing. History has left its mark here. Not just in the land or the labor, but in the very bones of the family. They carry within them traces of those who came before trials, endured promises, broken dreams, deferred. Yet they also carry something more elusive: resilience, the quiet, unyielding will to survive, to exist, to witness and remember. In this place, every footstep echoes with layers of memory. The earth itself seems to record each sigh, each whisper, each heartbeat. And perhaps if one listens closely, it can tell the story of a family that refused to be erased. October's sun climbs higher, light spilling over cane stalks, illuminating dust motes that dance like tiny spirits. Every detail sharpens the texture of worn wood, the lines etched on the father's face, the delicate hands of a child clutching a tattered rag doll. Shadows stretch and contract, bending around the corners of the cabin, the trees, the fields. Everything conspires to create a stage that is at once intimate and vast, a living record of struggle, endurance, and quiet defiance. Before we move further into the narrative, consider the cadence of this land, the way it breathes with the history of those who tilled it, who disappeared upon it, who survived upon it. The resilient family is at once ordinary and extraordinary, their lives intersecting with the remnants of slavery, the ghostly traces of Reconstruction, and the unspoken legacies of generations long gone. And yet their story is only beginning. Records from the era are sparse, fragmented, yet they speak with a voice that refuses to be silenced. The Freedmen's Bureau files mention cabins like the one standing at the edge of the Mississippi field. Small, cramped wooden skeletons sheltering families who were free in name only. In the official reports, words like "fate unknown" appear, scrawled across pages yellowed with age. A child listed as missing, a father recorded as absent. Details so minimal, yet they echo like a tolling bell across the decades. These documents, tough, bureaucratic, impersonal, cannot capture the full weight of the lives they enumerate. But they are all that remain, whispering their truths to those who dare to listen. In a newspaper dated June 1932, one headline reads, "Family lost to fields of cotton, no trace remains." The accompanying photograph shows a vague silhouette in front of a dilapidated cabin, grainy, blurred, barely identifiable. The story tells of a family who left for work before sunrise and never returned. Some claim they were claimed by the river, others by the heat. Still, the local children whisper that the family walks at night, their shadows stretching across the cane, their songs carried in the wind. Folklore, perhaps, but echoes of truth linger. The line between fact and legend begins to blur. From WPA narratives, we learn of the dreams that haunted children of sharecroppers. Visions of their ancestors walking across fields that glowed with a ghostly light. Whispers of songs their grandparents sang softly at night. They spoke of phantom footsteps following them home, of doors that opened and closed by themselves, and of voices murmuring their names from the edge of the forest. Teachers, overworked and underpaid, recorded these accounts in hushed tones, unsure whether they were preserving the truth or merely entertaining superstition. Yet the repetition of these stories across towns suggests something more. A collective memory, a spiritual imprint left on the land by those who labored and suffered. Maps of the era reveal the patterns of the exodusters, the migration of freed African Americans from the Deep South to Kansas and beyond. Roads once traveled by fugitives, paths lined with cane rivers and dense forests. These maps mark the journey of hope and peril in equal measure. Families like the resilient family may have stayed tethered to the soil that had been theirs for generations, despite its burdens. In one such map, the cabin appears as a small black dot, insignificant yet central, a marker of endurance in a landscape that tried to erase them. Among the surviving testimonies, one diary stands out, penned by a teacher in a neighboring town. The children speak often of the night figures. They say their parents march in the fields, though I see none. Perhaps it is fatigue, or perhaps a spirit that remains. Yet their eyes, so wide, so certain, tell me they know more than I can see. The diary continues, listing the routines of the family, the long hours, the rituals before bedtime, the songs hummed softly in the dark. The mundane and the supernatural intertwine, the hard reality of survival with the ethereal persistence of memory. There are other records ads placed in newspapers during Reconstruction and the early 1930s. Runaway child? Fate unknown. Reward offered. The children of sharecroppers were often listed as missing in these ads. Sometimes they returned, sometimes they vanished. Their names etched into the columns of local papers, their stories truncated. Yet they remain alive in the whispers of neighbors, in the hushed warnings of elders, in the soft laments of spirituals. Each mention is a thread in a tapestry that refuses to unravel. The land itself bears witness. The cane sways in rhythm with the ghosts of labor past. Footprints vanish into soft earth only to reappear in unlikely places. Some nights, travelers claim to see lanterns moving across the fields, carried by figures who vanish when approached. Others report hearing the tap of shoes on wooden floors of empty cabins, the quiet murmur of voices in languages long forgotten. Is it memory, imagination, or something more? The resilient family, though alive, lives alongside these echoes. They are attuned to the whispers of the past, shaped by a landscape that remembers. One particularly chilling account comes from a neighbor. I saw them once, he writes, marching in the field after sunset. Their shapes were pale, moving in silence. The children followed. And I knew then something ancient was walking with them. This is folklore, yes, yet repeated so often that it becomes a part of the historical record. The boundary between fact and story dissolves, leaving a space where the resilient family exists in both realms, tangible and spectral, enduring and ephemeral. Even in the mundane routines, traces of history are felt. The act of planting a row of beans, of hauling water, of preparing meals over a sputtering fire. Each task is layered with memory, every gesture carrying forward the legacy of survival. Some mornings the father pauses, looking across the field, as if seeing not just the rows of cane, but the shadows of ancestors bending beside him. The mother hums softly, a spiritual her grandmother taught her. The tune resonates beyond the walls of the cabin, into the fields, into the night, into the memory of all who labored before her. In this layer of narrative, fact and folklore are inseparable. The documents, the diaries, the ads, they anchor us in reality. The whispers, the dreams, the ghostly figures, they reveal the soul of the experience. Together they tell a story not merely of survival, but of persistence, of a family's ability to endure under circumstances that sought to erase them. And as the sun sets behind the skeletal trees, casting long shadows across the worn paths, the resilient family continues their quiet march, carrying the weight of history and the whispers of those lost to time. Listen again and hear the blend, the crunch of dirt underfoot, the faint rustle of cane, the soft hum of a spiritual in the distance. And beneath it all, the persistent undertone of memory of ancestors, of children lost and found, of a land that remembers even when men forget. The field, the cabin, the family, intertwined with fact and folklore, the tangible and the ethereal, forming a rhythm that is both haunting and beautiful, a cadence of survival, of witness, of unbroken spirit. The morning mist lingers low over the cane fields, dew glinting like tiny shards of glass. Every footstep seems amplified, every rustle of leaves sharper. The resilient family moves through the rows, hands blistered from toil backs bent under the weight of labor. But today, something feels different. A chill winds its way across the field, curling around ankles, rising to brush against necks. The children hesitate, pausing mid-step as if sensing something unseen. In the distance, the skeletal oak quivers, though no wind moves its branches. Shadows stretch longer than the sun allows, and the dog growls softly, low in its throat. Earlier this week, one of the younger children vanished for hours, simply disappeared. The father searched the field, calling out, the mother running along the narrow dirt paths, their voices swallowed by the cane. They found the child eventually curled under a fallen branch, eyes wide with silent fear. But the explanation offered, I was following a shadow, was never fully understood. Whispers in the neighboring cabins speak of night figures that wander the fields, silent, pale, moving in rhythm with the earth. Fact or folklore? The line is thin. Yet the effect on the family is tangible. Hearts racing, nerves taut. By midday, the sun burns through the fog, baking the fields into a harsh, unyielding landscape. The work continues, harvesting, planting, tending, but now with an edge of tension. Every sound is questioned, every movement watched. In the distance, the faint toll of a bell from a long-abandoned church echoes, its source uncertain. Perhaps a reminder of the days when the plantation church rang for Sunday service. Or perhaps a specter of another time, a signal from those who walked before. The mother pauses, wiping sweat from her brow, her eyes catching a movement at the edge of the tree line. A shadow darts between the trees, then gone. At dusk, the cabin itself seems alive. Floorboards groan beneath invisible weight. Doors creak. Wind whistles through gaps in the walls. The children huddle close, whispering of figures seen at night. One speaks of a man in tattered clothing standing at the corner of the field. Another claims to have heard a woman singing, though no one was near. The father listens, skeptical but attentive. The mother hums softly, a spiritual calming the fear. Yet even she cannot deny the tension that coils like smoke through the room. Outside, the land bears witness. Footprints appear where none should be. The soil is disturbed, yet no one has passed. Fields that were smooth in the morning are uneven, broken by some unseen force. Night falls, and the family lights a small fire. Shadows flickering across faces etched with worry and determination. They eat in silence, listening, waiting. The dog alert circles the perimeter, ears pricked, muscles tense. And somewhere beyond the cabin, a sound, a soft thud, or perhaps a sigh echoes through the trees. A few miles away, the neighboring town shares its own incidents. Doors left ajar, livestock missing, shadows glimpsed at windows. The adults speak in hushed tones of haunted fields and wanderers of the night. But it is the children who see most clearly, who sense the pulse of something old, something tied to the history of this land. One child whispers to another, "They are watching us, the ones who never left." And in the hush that follows, the wind seems to carry approval or warning through the cane. Reports from local authorities are scant. One or two mention disturbances in the field or unexplained disappearances. But no investigation is conducted. The resilient family is left to their own devices, to interpret the whispers, the shadows, the fleeting figures that appear at the edges of perception. Their lives are a dance with the unknown, survival intertwined with vigilance, every action deliberate, every glance toward the tree line measured. In the small hours of night, the father rises, steps lightly to the cabin door, peers out. The moon casts a silver light across the field, and there, just beyond the boundary of cane shapes, move elongated, almost spectral. They march silently in single file, the echoes of ancestors or the hallucinations of fatigue. He cannot tell. Yet he knows instinctively to respect them, to honor their presence. He returns to bed, sharing only a quiet word with the mother. "We are not alone," she replies, nodding, understanding without question. And yet, life persists. The family eats, sleeps, works. Yet each day carries an undercurrent of uncertainty. Every footstep on the dirt path is deliberate. Every movement accompanied by the knowledge that the past is not gone. It lingers, pressing against the present, guiding warning. The children grow attuned to these rhythms, learning to sense the unseen, to interpret the whispers, to survive in harmony with a world that alternates between seen and unseen, known and unknown. As the days unfold, the incidents intensify. Livestock are found missing, Fences torn as if by unseen hands, shadows coalescing near the edges of the field. The mother standing at the doorway one evening sees a figure cross the horizon. Not human, not entirely, yet familiar in posture, a bending of history itself into corporeal form. The father catches sight of it too, a fleeting moment, and then it vanishes, leaving behind only a chill and the lingering sense that they are being watched. Through it all, the children remain resilient. One hums a spiritual their grandmother taught them. Another traces patterns in the dirt, almost as if communicating with something beyond. They do not fully understand, yet they feel the presence, the weight of history, the touch of memory, the whispers of those who labored before. The land itself seems alive, remembering, observing, and in its quiet way, acknowledging the endurance of those who persist. By the end of the week, the family gathers at the edge of the field. A ritual of sorts, hands joined, eyes scanning the horizon. They speak little, yet the bond between them strengthens. Each incident, each unexplained event becomes part of their narrative, a rhythm of survival, a tapestry woven of fear and courage, reality and legend. The resilient family walks a line between two worlds, between the tangible and the spectral. And in doing so, they embody a history that refuses to be silenced. Archives speak with a voice both brittle and persistent. Official reports, maps, and military records hint at paths once walked by families like the resilient family of Mississippi. Diaries, newspapers, Freedmen's Bureau records, each a fragment of a truth that refuses to remain buried. One such map, meticulously drawn in 1879, but reused and annotated through the 1930s, traces the roots of the exodusters. Those freedmen who fled the deep South in search of promise. The lines, thick and thin, mark more than travel, they mark survival. The invisible veins of hope pulsing through a land scarred by oppression. And here, in the fields near the cabin, one can almost feel the weight of these journeys, echoes of footsteps that never ceased. In a report dated 1931, a regional Freedmen's Bureau clerk notes, cabins at the edge of cotton fields remain occupied. Families present laboring, children seen wandering beyond boundaries at dusk. Parents report voices, footsteps, lights in the distance, no explanation found. The phrasing is clinical, detached. Yet the words carry a resonance, the subtle acknowledgement of phenomena that defy rational interpretation. It is in these lines that history flirts with the unexplained, where the record admits to a presence that cannot be catalogued. The resilient family continues its labor aware of these historical echoes. They move as if part of the memory itself, their actions choreographed by centuries of survival. Each planting of corn, each row of beans, each swing of the hoe, deliberate, precise, reverent. The father pauses to examine a furrow, traces a hand along its edge, and for a moment he swears the soil remembers. That something buried centuries ago breathes beneath his fingers. The mother tending the hearth hums a spiritual that has passed from grandmother to child. Its melody carries weight, a talisman against despair, and perhaps against the lingering presence that stalks the edges of the field. Across the Delta, the press occasionally reports incidents that border on the unbelievable. Shadow figures observed in abandoned fields, ghostly silhouettes following families at night. They call it folklore, a fanciful exaggeration, but the locals nod knowingly. They have seen too much, felt too much, to dismiss such accounts. And in the diaries collected during the WPA narratives, one finds recurring motifs. Dreams of ancestors, warnings whispered through visions, the sensation of unseen hands guiding, protecting, admonishing. The boundaries between lived experience and legend blur. The resilient family moves within this liminal space alive to both the tangible and the spectral. One such diary, penned by a teacher in 1932, recounts, "The children speak of a man who walks silently at the edge of the field. Not threatening, but present, a guide or a sentinel. Sometimes they hear voices singing in a language I cannot recognize. They wake frightened yet comforted. They claim it is the same song their grandparents hummed from long ago. Perhaps it is memory, or perhaps something more." The diary is careful, factual, yet the cadence of the narrative betrays wonder, awe, and fear. The resilient family inhabits a space where history and spirit entwine. Maps of the era reveal more than paths of migration. They chart the ebb and flow of settlements, the rise and fall of communities. Abandoned towns dot the landscape, once thriving enclaves of freed African Americans. Their names fade into obscurity, their streets silent. Yet folklore preserves their existence. Stories speak of ghostly markets of children playing in empty town squares, of music echoing from vacant halls. The resilient family, rooted in their cabin at the edge of the field, carries the legacy of these vanished places. Every planting season, a testimony. Every harvest, a ritual of remembrance. And then there are the rituals themselves. The mother lights candles at dusk, small, unassuming, yet imbued with meaning. She whispers prayers. Some Christian, some passed down orally from ancestors who survived slavery and Reconstruction. The children watch, absorbing, learning, participating in rites that link them to a lineage of endurance. The father, when no one is looking, traces symbols into the soil, protective marks, warding off misfortune, gestures that carry weight, though the origins are shrouded in memory and legend. Even the dog, alert and watchful, senses the rhythm, the pulse of history embedded in every corner of the land. Night falls heavy and full. The wind carries scents of cane earth and smoke from distant fires. Shadows deepen, stretching unnaturally across fields. The children lie in bed listening, waiting. A soft tapping at the window or the floorboards. A faint whisper. They know not to fear. The presence is not malevolent. It is the echo of labor, of lives lived and lost. The resilient family sleeps lightly, attuned to the pulse of both the land and its spirits. Occasionally, the father ventures to the edge of the field at midnight, the moon silvering the world. He sees shapes that flit between trees, figures that appear and vanish. A man, a woman, children. They move with purpose, silently, not threatening, yet impossible to ignore. He wonders if these are the spirits of those who vanished, lost to history, erased from records. Or perhaps ancestors walking beside the living, reminding them of the price of endurance. He returns home, heart pounding, sharing only a whisper with the mother. They walk with us, and she nods, eyes reflecting understanding, recognition, and reverence. Local accounts corroborate strange phenomena. Reports of lights moving across fields, of voices singing in abandoned cabins, of livestock disturbed without explanation. Officials dismiss these stories. Newspapers mock them. Yet the oral tradition persists, whispered among neighbors, shared around fires, taught to children as a subtle warning and a story of resilience. The land itself seems to archive these events. Every footstep, every sound, every song embedded in soil and air. Through this lens, fact layer 2 and folklore layer 2 merge. The historical documents, the maps, the diaries, the reports anchor the narrative in reality, while the whispered stories dream visions and spectral sightings enrich it, creating a dual narrative, tangible and ethereal, reality and legend. The resilient family exists within this duality, living both the documented hardships of sharecropping and the intangible, haunting echoes of a history that refuses to remain silent. By the end of the week, the family's labor continues. Yet each action carries weight. Each glance toward the tree line, each footstep through the field, each whispered prayer acknowledges the unseen, the remembered, the spectral. Their story, embedded in soil and memory, unfolds in layers, every layer containing a fragment of the truth, a fragment of the legend. The rhythm of work, of song, of vigilance, of fear, and of endurance continues, interweaving fact and folklore into a living testament. In this landscape, one begins to perceive time differently, the past bleeding into the present. The resilient family walks in the steps of generations, carrying names unrecorded, faces never photographed, lives never fully documented, yet preserved in memory, spirit, and land. Each day, a living archive. Each night, a chorus of whispers. Each song hummed in the dark, a thread connecting them to ancestors, to vanished communities, to enduring spirits. The line between fact and legend dissolves, leaving only the cadence of life's survival and witness. And as dawn breaks again, light spilling over cane and dirt, the land breathes remembering, and the resilient family stands bending, planting, tending, singing, and listening. A living bridge between history and memory, anchored in reality, yet sensitive to the spectral. Fact and folklore entwined, a testament to endurance, to survival, to the quiet, unyielding persistence of a family who refuses to be erased. The night descends fully over the Mississippi Delta, darkness pooling in the hollows of the fields, swallowing the rows of cane. The resilient family moves cautiously, their shadows long and distorted by the silver light of a waning moon. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, of smoke from distant fires, of something older, something that belongs neither entirely to the living nor the dead. The father pauses at the edge of the field, listening, the soft rustle of leaves sounding like whispers in a language long forgotten. A shiver runs down his spine, and he wonders what walks beside them unseen. Earlier that week, a document surfaced, misplaced in the archive of the county courthouse. A Reconstruction-era record brittle with age, listing freedmen, their families' occupations, and in small script, a notation, fate unknown, a phrase repeated again and again. Some names match the resilient family's ancestors. Others are unfamiliar. Yet the repetition carries weight, a rhythm, a pulse that seems to beat in sync with the family's steps across the field. It is as though history itself watches, judging, acknowledging, warning. The mother lights a single lantern as dusk approaches, its glow flickering across the worn boards of the cabin. She hums softly a melody passed down from her grandmother. It is a song of warning, of endurance, of remembrance. The children gather close, their faces illuminated by the amber light. Eyes wide, they listen to the wind, to the creak, to the faint creak of floorboards outside the cabin. The dog stands alert, muscles taut, senses heightened. It is a rhythm they have learned, a cadence of survival. Outside, the fields seem to move, not with wind, not with animals, but with figures, shadowed shapes that flit at the edge of perception. Sometimes one glimpses a man, a woman, children, marching in single file across the cane, silent, deliberate. The father steps forward, heart pounding, unsure if these are hallucinations born of exhaustion or the lingering spirits of those who labored here before. He breathes slowly, counting each step, grounding himself in the present. Yet he cannot shake the feeling that the past is walking beside them. From WPA interviews, one account describes an event eerily similar. A family working late in the fields witnesses lanterns floating across rows of crops, figures appearing and disappearing in the mist. They report hearing voices chanting softly, unintelligible, yet imbued with authority. With each recounting, the story grows. The line between reality and legend blurs. The resilient family now lives within that blurred space. Every shadow, every whisper, every movement outside the cabin, a thread connecting them to the archive of memory. The night deepens, and the phenomena intensify. A distant bell tolls, though the church has long since collapsed. The children lie awake listening, counting heartbeats, counting shadows. One whispers, "They are here, watching." The father nods silent, aware of both fear and reverence. The mother murmurs a prayer, soft, almost imperceptible. Yet it carries across the darkness a tether between the living and the unseen. The dog growls, ears pricked, alert to vibrations imperceptible to human senses. Suddenly, a gust of wind sweeps across the field. Cane stalks bow in unison. And then, movement, unmistakable. Figures materialize between the rows, pale, ethereal, yet tangible. One child gasps. The father grips the mother's hand. They watch, frozen. The figures pass silently, not threatening, not engaging, simply marching. A procession of history, memory, and spirit. Each step resonates. Each heartbeat echoes across the field, as though the land itself records the moment for eternity. The family retreats to the cabin, but the presence lingers. Shadows cast by lantern light twist unnaturally on walls. Floorboards groan beneath invisible weight. Whispers thread through the room. Voices of ancestors, of lost children, of those recorded as fate unknown. The air grows heavy, thick with history and expectation. They gather close, forming a circle, hands intertwined. And in that moment, an understanding passes among them. Survival is more than toil. It is witness. It is acknowledgement. It is communion with the past that shaped them. In the archive, another fragment surfaces. A military record of a phantom regiment, a unit of African American soldiers during World War I, listed in official reports. Training marching. Then suddenly fate unknown. Some men returned, others vanished. The similarities between this and the family's experience in Mississippi are chilling. The rhythm of disappearance, of erasure, of survival. The resilient family, though alive, is walking in that continuum. A bridge between the known and the unknowable. The night stretches, hours passing like centuries. The wind shifts, carrying distant songs, spirituals, echoes of voices sung across time. The mother joins in softly, harmonizing. The children follow. The father adds a low hum. The melody reaches into the cane, into the darkness, and perhaps into the unseen. The figures in the field pause, as if listening, as if recognizing the acknowledgement of continuity. Then slowly, they dissolve into the night, leaving only the memory of presence. At dawn, the family emerges, fatigue heavy, yet unbroken. They survey the fields, nothing visible, yet they carry the weight of last night. Every glance, every movement, every sound, layered with significance. Their eyes meet, understanding passing without words. They have survived. They have witnessed. They have engaged with the history that surrounds them. The events of the night are recorded not in official archives, not in newspapers, but in memory, in ritual, in song. Fact and folklore entwined, inseparable. Throughout the day, labor resumes. Planting, harvesting, tending. Yet the cadence has shifted. Every step mindful, every glance deliberate. Shadows are acknowledged, whispers respected. They are now participants in the continuum. The unbroken thread from ancestors to present, from documented history to the spectral echoes of folklore. Their endurance is a testament, a bridge between what is known and what cannot be measured. Even in mundane tasks, hauling water, repairing fences, preparing meals, the memory of the night lingers, guiding, warning, reminding. The resilient family has become attuned to the subtle rhythms of the land, its spectral presence, the pulse of history embedded in every inch of soil. They are living conduits, witnesses to both human struggle and the lingering imprint of the past. As dusk falls again, lanterns lit, the cane shimmering in twilight, the family pauses, hand in hand, the dog alert, the wind carrying the songs of spirits past. A final procession passes along the edge of the field, silent, reverent, acknowledging the living. And then, nothing. The land falls silent, yet the memory remains, etched into the resilient family, into the soil, into the cadence of life that continues. The sun rises over the Mississippi Delta once more, light spilling across the cane, painting the soil in muted golds and browns. The resilient family stands at the edge of their field, eyes scanning the horizon, hands calloused, backs bent from toil. Yet their gaze carries the weight of history, of memory, of survival. The events of the past weeks, the shadows, the whispers, the apparitions linger in their consciousness, embedded as deeply as the roots of the crops beneath their feet. The surrounding landscape has changed little, yet the echoes of the past reverberate in every corner. Abandoned cabins, skeletal trees, paths once traveled by generations. Some are marked in faded maps. Some exist only in memory and whispered stories. The children grow taller, their hands strong, their eyes sharp. Yet they carry with them the knowledge of those who came before, the understanding that survival is not merely physical, it is spiritual. It is awareness. It is the ability to witness and remember. News from the broader Delta region trickles in. Towns, abandoned families, scattered fields, reclaimed by nature. Yet stories persist. Accounts of spirits seen at dusk, of spectral figures walking at the edges of fields of lanterns, floating silently over abandoned cabins. These tales are shared around fires in hushed conversations, and they reach the resilient family as well. A tapestry of history and legend, reminding them that their story is part of a larger continuum. The mother hums a spiritual softly as she works, a melody carrying across the field. The children join in. The father adds a low hum. Together their song bridges the past and present. It reaches beyond the cabin, beyond the field, touching unseen ears, and perhaps touching those who have passed. A faint wind stirs the cane. Shadows seem to shift, a subtle acknowledgement from the land itself, that the resilient family endures, that memory persists, that survival is both tangible and eternal. Letters arrive sporadically, from relatives who migrated north, from communities in Harlem, Chicago. Reports of new lives, new struggles, new stories, yet the Delta remains their anchor. The soil of Mississippi scorched, fertile, demanding forgiving only the diligent. Each day spent in labor, in vigilance, in remembrance, strengthens the connection between the family and the land, between the living and the echoes of those long gone. The cabin creaks in the morning breeze, floorboards softened by years, boards warped with age, but still standing, a testament to endurance. Within its walls, the family moves with rhythm, each task a ritual, each gesture imbued with history. The children learn the old ways, not merely to survive, but to honor, to plant, to harvest, to observe, to listen. Every footstep, every heartbeat, a continuation of a narrative that refuses erasure. Occasionally at night, shadows return, subtle, fleeting, hints of figures among the cane. A soft tapping on the cabin door. The rustle of leaves just beyond the yard. The family does not flinch. They acknowledge, respect, understand. The presence is neither threat nor blessing, but a reminder that history walks beside them, that memory is alive, that the past remains entwined with the present. Local scholars occasionally arrive, digging through archives, reading diaries, reports, and maps, some fascinated by the folklore, others seeking historical accuracy. Some leave inspired, others unsettled, unable to reconcile the documented facts with the stories whispered from generation to generation. Yet none can deny the persistence of the land, of the family, of the history, a rhythm that survives beyond written record, beyond human observation, enduring in the soil in memory and spirit. The resilient family continues to plant, to tend, to harvest. Yet their understanding of the land has deepened. They sense its moods, its history, its lessons. Each day the children walk between rows of cane, tracing paths their ancestors walked, feeling the echoes of labor, the whispers of the vanished, the presence of spirits. The land teaches them as much as any book or lesson, a living archive, a bridge between fact and folklore, between past and present. As seasons pass, the family endures. Generations grow, fade, and are replaced. The cabin remains. The fields thrive. Yet the stories, the songs, the whispers, the shadows remain, immortalized in memory, in ritual, in continued labor. In quiet moments, the mother hums the spiritual learned from her grandmother. The father traces protective symbols in the soil. The children observe, participate, absorb, learning to navigate a world layered with reality and spectral presence. The echoes extend beyond the family. Travelers recount seeing shapes moving among the cane at dusk, hearing soft chants in the distance, the whispers of vanished towns, of phantom figures, of nighttime processions. Each account adding to a layered history, a landscape rich with memory. Some dismiss it as superstition, others as imagination. Yet the truth persists, beyond the ability to categorize, beyond the reach of skepticism. Even the soil carries witness. Furrows from planting, footprints of labor, traces of human presence. They are recorded, if only subtly, in the tilt of a stalk, in the depression of earth, in the ripple of wind across the fields. Every day, the resilient family contributes to this archive, conscious or unconscious, a living testament to endurance, to survival, to the capacity to carry memory forward. And so, the story continues. The children grow into adults, the family expands, yet the rhythms remain. They remember the shadows, the whispers, the lanterns, the unseen marchers. They honor the legacy, the lineage of survival. The land remains alive with echoes, and each time a breeze passes, a branch bends, a shadow shifts. The family remembers that they are part of something larger, something eternal. As the sun sets, casting long golden shadows across the cane, the mother pauses at the edge of the field. The father beside her. The children gather. Their voices rise in a soft hymn, a spiritual that transcends time, and in its cadence, one feels the presence of ancestors, of those marked fate unknown, of generations whose endurance was tested, yet whose spirits persist. The land itself seems to exhale, acknowledging their witness, honoring their survival. Before the story closes, before the light fades completely, consider this. Each shadow, each whisper, each song, each footstep is a record, a testimony, a bridge between fact and folklore. between memory and living. The resilient family of Mississippi, who survived sharecropping, who walked among shadows, who listened to the land. They endure, and in doing so, they remind us that history is never truly gone, that memory lives, that survival carries meaning beyond life itself. You have witnessed their story, a narrative woven from soil and spirit, from documented fact, from whispered legend, from shadows in the cane, from light on the cabin. Their lives, their endurance, their songs echo still. And as you listen, consider, where does history end, and where does memory begin? The resilient family stands in the fields, in the twilight, in the enduring heartbeat of the Mississippi Delta, silent, persistent, unbroken, waiting, watching, remembering.